Lenin and Stalin on the State Form of the Dictatorship of the Proletariat. Written by, development by Marx and Engels. Central role. The dictatorship of the proletariat is central to Marxist-Leninist theory. Historical contribution. Marx and Engels highlighted the world historical role of the working class and developed the theory of proletarian revolution. Key insights. They emphasize the necessity of breaking the bourgeois state apparatus to establish the dictatorship of the proletariat. Distortions by opportunists. Opportunist manipulation. The revolutionary conclusions of Marx and Engels were forgotten or distorted by opportunists and bourgeois sympathizers. Two distortion trends. Reconciliation of classes theory. Promoted by bourgeois sociologists and socialists, e.g. Scheidman, Vandervelde, MacDonald, L. Blum. Replaced Marx's idea of the state as a tool of class suppression with the notion of class reconciliation by the state. Centrist silence on state destruction. Centrists of the Second International, led by Kautsky, acknowledged the state as an organ of class rule, but rejected Marx's call to destroy the bourgeois state apparatus. Lenin's contributions. Restoration of Marxism. Lenin restored Marx's original views on the state, which had been distorted by opportunists. He further developed Marxist theory, emphasizing the state as an instrument for suppressing one class by another. State and revolution. Criticized bourgeois and centrist theories. Demonstrated the necessity of smashing the bourgeois state to achieve proletarian rule. Lenin's practical additions. Measures for state destruction. Economic measures. Undermining the economic strength of landowners and capitalists. Bureaucracy. Liquidation of bureaucratic, venal officials and promotion of conscious working-class representatives. Police. Replacement of the old police with a workers' militia. Judiciary. Substitution of bourgeois courts with revolutionary tribunals and people's courts. Army. Reorganization of the military. Liberation from bourgeois command. New principles of recruitment and political education. Formation of a new army with new command personnel. Significance of Lenin's theory. Revitalized the Marxist understanding of the state's role in class struggle. Provided a detailed blueprint for dismantling bourgeois state structures and constructing a proletarian state. Lenin's contributions to the dictatorship of the proletariat. Discovery of Soviet power. Defined Soviet power as the state form of the dictatorship of the proletariat. Class alliance. Expanded the concept of the dictatorship of the proletariat to include a class alliance. Proletariat leads. Alliance with the peasantry is central. Proletarian democracy. Developed the idea of the dictatorship of the proletariat as the highest form of democracy. Proletarian democracy represents the exploited majority. Contrasts with bourgeois democracy, which represents the exploiting minority. Stalin's defense and development of Lenin's ideas. Alliance of classes. Emphasized the working class's leadership in its alliance with the peasantry as the cornerstone of the dictatorship of the proletariat. Mechanism of dictatorship. Highlighted the central role of the Bolshevik Party as the guiding force in the Soviet state. Described the drives from the party to the masses. Trade unions, councils, cooperatives, Komsomol Communist Youth League. Advancement of socialist state doctrine. Further elaborated on Lenin's teachings about the characteristics and advantages of a socialist state. Establishment of the first socialist state. Creation of a multinational socialist state. Under Lenin and Stalin's leadership, the working class allied with the peasantry to overthrow exploiters and establish the Soviet socialist state. This state became a powerful, multinational entity admired worldwide. Transformation into an indestructible fortress. Stalin described the USSR as an indestructible fortress due to its rapid transformation and comprehensive strengthening. Achievements of the Soviet socialist state. Elimination of exploitative classes. Exploitative classes were eradicated, and socialism was built in the USSR. Development of socialist democracy. Socialist democracy flourished, representing a truly democratic and powerful state. Victory in World War II. Mobilized national resources to defeat Nazi Germany and imperialist Japan during World War II. Stronghold of anti-imperialism. Became a global stronghold for anti-imperialist forces, promoting peace, democracy, freedom, and independence of peoples. Communist construction. Focused on organizing and advancing communist construction domestically. Global and historical significance. World historical impact. The Bolshevik Party's adherence to Leninist-Stalinist teachings enabled victories of global importance. Model for anti-imperialism. The Soviet socialist state became a beacon for international movements opposing imperialism and fostering independence. Stalin's defense and development of Lenin's doctrine. Central role of the dictatorship of the proletariat. Stalin identified the dictatorship of the proletariat as the core of Marxism-Leninism. Defined its three principles: suppression of exploiters, national defense, fostering international proletarian solidarity, and advancing global revolution. Separation of exploited masses from the bourgeoisie, strengthening the proletariat's alliance with these masses, and state-led socialist construction. Organization of socialism, destruction of class divisions, and transition to a stateless and classless society. Phases of socialist state development. First phase, October Revolution to the liquidation of exploitative classes' functions. Suppression of bourgeois resistance. Defense of the country against external threats. Economic, organizational, and cultural educational work underdeveloped during this phase. Second phase, after the liquidation of exploitative classes' suppression function disappeared as exploitation was eradicated. Military, intelligence, and punitive organs focused externally against external threats. New functions, protecting socialist values. Fully developed economic, organizational, and cultural educational tasks. Peaceful internal development became the state's primary focus. A new socialist state. Stalin described the state of the second phase as unprecedented in history, different in form and function from the socialist state of the first phase. Emphasized peaceful, internal development while maintaining external defense. Innovations in state theory. State under communism. Stalin argued that the socialist state would not wither away until capitalist encirclement was eliminated. Highlighted the enduring need for a strong state to counter external threats. Internal and external state functions. Developed a comprehensive understanding of the interrelationship between internal and external functions of the socialist state. Introduced a new formulation regarding the role of the state under communism. Stalin's contribution to Marxist theory. Eliminated theoretical gaps. Addressed deficiencies in Marxist teachings about the state. Provided a cohesive and harmonious framework for understanding the socialist state. Comprehensive theory. Integrated economic, military, and cultural aspects into a unified theory. Advanced the Marxist doctrine with clarity and practical relevance. Necessity of a strong dictatorship of the proletariat. Stalin's guiding principle. A strong and powerful dictatorship of the proletariat is essential for the triumph of communism. Opposition to misinterpretations. In 1933, Stalin rejected calls for the premature abolition of Soviets and the state in areas of collectivization. Criticized misuse of the concept of the withering away of the state to justify complacency and counter-revolutionary theories. Advocated for intensified class struggle to abolish classes. Emphasized strengthening state power to combat capitalist encirclement and remnants of dying classes. Role of the Soviet state in socialist transformation. Decisive role in socialist economic restructuring. The Soviet state led the transformation of the economy on socialist principles amid struggles against capitalist and petty bourgeois elements. Indestructible strength. Strengthened the state ensured a robust economy, which provided an unshakable rear for the USSR during the Great Patriotic War. The Soviet state emerged stronger post-war, demonstrating its advantages over bourgeois systems in peace and war. Contributions to World War II victory. Preparation and defense. Strengthened state organs, particularly the army and intelligence, enabled the Soviet Union to repel Nazi Germany's attack. Played a key role in liberating European nations from fascism. Post-war strength. The war highlighted the superiority of the Soviet social and state systems. Sources of strength in the Soviet state. Stalin's analysis on the 26th anniversary of the October Revolution. Key sources of strength. Friendship of peoples. Unity among the diverse peoples of the USSR. Organizational role of the party. the Bolshevik Party's leadership and connection to the masses. Moral and political unity ensured the unshakable stability of the Soviet state. Soviet patriotism, a driving force for the unity and resilience of the Soviet people. Achievements under Lenin and Stalinist theory. Guided development. The Bolshevik Party strengthened and developed the Soviet state following Lenin and Stalinist principles. Foundation of strength. The state's role in socialism, class struggle, and national defense established the USSR as a formidable force. Economic and cultural development. Guiding principles. The Soviet state directs economic and cultural development in the interests of the people. Involves all workers in creative work and transformation of nature on an unprecedented scale. Major initiatives. Protective forest planting plans to combat drought, showcasing large-scale environmental transformation. Focus on science and culture. Promotes the advancement of science and education, as evidenced by the All-Union Academy of Agricultural Sciences session, where Myshure and Lysenko's biological science triumphed over reactionary trends. Enhances Soviet culture through decisions combating anti-popular ideological influences. Ideological leadership. Struggle against reactionary influences. The party combats bourgeois aestheticism, formalism, cosmopolitanism, and servility to Western bourgeois culture. Promotes the significance of Russian and Soviet culture. Development of Soviet culture. Culture is national in form and socialist in content. Embodies advanced traditions of Russian and other Soviet peoples, further developing them in Soviet socialist culture. Patriotic and national education. Spirit of patriotism educates workers in Soviet national pride and devotion to the party and the socialist state. Unity as a source of strength. The connection between the Soviet people and the socialist state forms an inexhaustible source of societal and state power. Contributions of Lenin and Stalin. Advancing Marxist teachings. Lenin and Stalin developed Marxist theory on the socialist state and the dictatorship of the proletariat. Republic of Soviets. Lenin concluded, based on revolutionary experience, that a Republic of Soviets was superior to a parliamentary democratic republic as a form of the dictatorship of the proletariat. The Soviets replaced parliamentary democracy as the most appropriate organizational form for the transition from capitalism to socialism. Origins and nature of Soviet organizations. Historical role. Lenin recognized Soviets as mass revolutionary organizations, emerging as early as 1905. Initially served as tools for revolutionary struggle, armed uprising, and as the foundation for new revolutionary power. Transformation into state power. By 1917, Lenin emphasized Soviets as most effective organs of mass political action and armed uprising, capable of dismantling the omnipotence of finance capital. A new form of state power suited to proletarian dictatorship. Features and strengths of Soviet organizations. Crushing bourgeois state apparatus. Soviets could destroy the bourgeois bureaucratic and judicial apparatus. Transformed the army from an instrument of oppression into a tool for liberation. Class alliance. Ensured close cooperation between the working class and the peasantry. Positioned the working class as the leading force in this alliance. Direct worker participation. Soviets allowed workers and peasants to organize and administer the state themselves. Unified all exploited masses under the leadership of the proletariat. Democratic functionality. Soviets were the most democratic organizations, engaging the working masses in state administration. Fostered creative initiative and organized the struggle for communism. Proletarian democracy versus bourgeois democracy. Contrast with bourgeois democracy. Bourgeois democracy is formal, restricted, and serves the rich. Proletarian democracy is genuine and inclusive, serving the workers, peasants, and intelligentsia. Conditions for proletarian democracy. Expropriation of the means of production from exploiters. Destruction of the old bureaucratic apparatus designed to suppress workers. Involvement of the broad masses in state management. Real democracy, based on the participation and support of the majority, enabled by the active involvement of workers and the exploited masses in governance. Lenin's vision for the Soviet state, mass participation, relied on the active support of the masses. Encouraged their direct involvement in administration and decision-making. Objective of communism. Soviets were tools for organizing and mobilizing the masses for the ultimate goal of achieving communism. Transition from bourgeois to proletarian democracy. Necessity of power transfer. Real democracy requires transferring power from the bourgeoisie to the proletariat. Essential steps. Confiscation of land, industry, and banks from capitalists. Transfer of public institutions, e.g., printing houses, theaters, schools, to workers' control. Without these, democracy for the people is an illusion designed to deceive workers and peasants. October Socialist Revolution broke the old state apparatus and established Soviet power. Transferred the main means of production to the worker state. Made democracy genuinely accessible to the working class, peasantry, and intelligentsia. The expansion of democracy. Replacement of bourgeois democracy. Replaced democracy for the rich with democracy for the poor. Ensured freedom of assembly and press for the majority rather than a privileged minority. Marked a revolutionary expansion of democracy, liberating humanity from the constraints of capital. Proletarian democracy versus bourgeois democracy. Bourgeois democracy promises equality but fails to deliver, e.g., gender, race, and national discrimination. Excludes masses from governance. Proletarian democracy fully implements equality regardless of gender, race, religion, or nationality. Actively involves the exploited masses in governance. More democratic than even the most advanced bourgeois republics. Achievements of Soviet democracy, economic and social advancements, rapid growth of socialist industry and advanced agriculture. Liquidation of exploitative classes and establishment of moral and political unity in society. National harmony. Ended national discord that existed under Tsarism. Strengthened friendship among USSR peoples based on genuine equality and voluntary cooperation. Implementation of rights. Actualized rights for the people, surpassing the formal rights promised by bourgeois democracy. Eliminated restrictions like property qualifications, racial and gender discrimination, and youth exclusion. Advantages of Soviet democracy. Inclusiveness. Involves the masses in administration and governance. Brings workers, peasants, and intelligentsia closer to the administrative apparatus. Constitutional foundations. The Soviet Constitution, based on socialist democracy, avoids limitations typical of bourgeois constitutions. No residence or education qualifications. No racial, national, or gender-based discrimination. No property qualifications. Victory of socialism. Strengthened moral and political unity in society. Demonstrated the superiority of Soviet democracy in practice, especially after the liquidation of exploitative classes. Characteristics of Soviet socialist democracy. Genuine equality. Ensures equality of citizens by legislatively enshrining the end of exploitation. Grants rights unimaginable under bourgeois democracy, such as right to work, right to rest, social security for illness and old age, universal access to education, material basis for freedoms. Democratic freedoms in the USSR are not mere proclamations, but are guaranteed through material provisions, ensuring practical access and use of rights. Mass involvement. Soviet democracy involves the broad participation of the masses in governance, built on the principle of democratic centralism. Local Soviets unified into a single state organization. Workers actively participate in the administration and oversight of the state. Deputies can be recalled and replaced if they fail to fulfill public trust. Peaceful focus under socialism. With the liquidation of exploitative classes, internal military suppression became unnecessary. Main tasks of the Soviet state shifted to economic organization, cultural and educational development, comparison with bourgeois democracy. Bourgeois democracy, as a facade, acts as a cover for the domination of exploiters over the oppressed, characterized by violence, exploitation, and superficial freedoms. Denies genuine participation in political life to the masses. Superiority of socialist democracy. Socialist democracy is inclusive, empowering the masses, and ensuring their active involvement in decision-making. Described by Lenin as the most massive and democratic form of governance possible under conditions of class struggle. Historical and global significance. End of bourgeois democratic parliamentarism. Lenin declared the era of bourgeois democratic parliamentarism over and proclaimed the beginning of the era of proletarian dictatorship and socialist democracy. Socialist democracy is the vehicle for the liberation of the working class and the triumph of socialism. Creation of the Republic of Soviets unified the most revolutionary and oppressed classes into a single state apparatus, drew those previously excluded by bourgeois democracy into decisive roles in state administration. Stalin's contributions, massive and democratic nature of Soviet power. Soviet power is the most inclusive and revolutionary state organization. Represents the majority of the population and functions as their instrument of power and dictatorship. Alliance of workers and peasants. Soviet power is grounded in the bond between the working class and the peasantry. Operates as the power of the majority over the minority, expressing the dictatorship of the proletariat. Soviet power is inherently internationalist. Unlike class-based societies that promote national oppression, the Soviet system seeks to eliminate such divisions and foster cooperation and unity among different nationalities within a single state. Stalin played a key role in shaping the Soviet Union's nationality policy. He emphasized the leading role of the Russian people while advocating for the development of national cultures and statehood for all Soviet peoples. The Soviet Constitution enshrined the principles of equality and internationalism. It rejected the nationalist biases of bourgeois constitutions and declared equal rights for all nations and races. The Leninist-Stalinist national policy led to the creation of a powerful, multinational socialist state. This was achieved by eliminating exploitation, promoting mutual assistance among peoples, and fostering the flourishing of national cultures within a socialist framework. Soviet power protects the interests of all workers. This overarching goal transcends national divisions and unites people across different nationalities. Soviet power facilitates working-class leadership. Its structure allows the working class, the most conscious and unified group, to lead the peasantry and other working people effectively. Soviet power unites legislative and executive functions. Unlike bourgeois systems with separate branches, the Soviet system streamlines these functions into a single organization, allowing for efficient governance and direct participation of the masses. Soviet power transforms the army. It liberates the army from serving the bourgeoisie and turns it into a tool for the people's liberation. Soviet power dismantles the old bureaucratic apparatus. It aims to eliminate bureaucracy and red tape in government agencies. Soviet power encourages mass participation in governance. It involves various organizations, trade unions, Komsomol, etc., in state administration, paving the way for the eventual withering away of the state in a communist society. Soviet power is the culmination of the search for an ideal political form. It builds upon the legacy of the Paris Commune and provides the structure for achieving the economic liberation of the proletariat and the complete victory of socialism. Soviet power is the highest form of the dictatorship of the proletariat. It serves as the primary tool for suppressing exploiters, eliminating classes, and building socialism. Lenin's teachings on Soviet power and the USSR's existence are of world historical significance. The Soviet Union, created and led by Lenin and Stalin, stands as a testament to the power and influence of these ideas. People's democracies in Eastern and Central Europe validate Marxist-Leninist theory. The rise of these regimes after World War II demonstrates the practical application and success of these ideas. These countries suffered under fascist dictatorships aligned with imperial powers. Before and during the war, they were subjected to brutal fascist rule and exploited by Nazi Germany and other imperialists in their conflict with the Soviet Union. The people's struggle against fascism was intertwined with national liberation and the fight for socialism. Their resistance against Nazi occupation aligned with the Soviet Union's fight against Hitler, contributing to the broader struggle for socialism. The defeat of Nazi Germany led to the collapse of fascist regimes in these countries. This created an opportunity for the people, led by communist parties, to seize power and establish new governments. People's democracy emerged from a broad anti-fascist, anti-imperialist struggle. Supported by the Soviet Union, these movements established new governments based on a coalition of workers, peasants, and intellectuals. The establishment of people's democracies involved revolutionary transformations. These included transferring power from landowners and capitalists to the people, nationalizing industry, and implementing land reform. The new governments exercised a dictatorship against enemies of the people while ensuring democracy for the working class. They suppressed counter-revolutionary attempts to restore the old order while guaranteeing political freedoms and improved living conditions for workers. The transition to socialism can take diverse forms. Lenin's observation about the variety of paths to socialism is reflected in the unique characteristics of people's democracies. Lenin's insights on diverse paths to socialism are relevant to people's democracies. His observations about the unique challenges and opportunities faced by different countries transitioning to socialism provide a valuable framework for understanding the experiences of Eastern and Central European nations. Lenin emphasized learning from the Russian experience while adapting to specific circumstances. He acknowledged the need for originality and consideration of local conditions, while stressing the importance of drawing lessons from the Soviet model. People's democracies arose with the support and guidance of the Soviet Union. The USSR's victory over fascism, its socialist model, and its moral, political, economic, and military assistance were crucial for the emergence of these regimes. The Soviet Union's role in World War II created favorable conditions for people's democracies. By defeating Nazi Germany, the USSR prevented the restoration of the old order and protected these countries from foreign intervention. The presence of the Soviet Army facilitated the transfer of power to the working class. It acted as a deterrent against counter-revolution and allowed the workers to establish people's democratic governments. The Soviet Union's victory created a new breach in the imperialist system. This expanded the anti-imperialist front and provided a strong foundation for the development of people's democracies. People's democracy serves as a form of the dictatorship of the proletariat. It represents a revolutionary power structure led by the working class, fulfilling the functions necessary for building socialism. The existence of the Soviet Union enabled the emergence and development of people's democracies. The USSR's success in building socialism and its support were vital for these countries to pursue a socialist path. The dictatorship of the proletariat can take various forms. While its core function is the suppression of exploiters, the specific methods and extent of this suppression can vary depending on the context. The specific conditions of the Russian Revolution necessitated limitations on bourgeois electoral rights. The intense hostility of the Russian bourgeoisie towards the Soviet government justified these restrictions in the early stages of the USSR. The degree of violence used against exploiters depends on their resistance. The proletariat uses violence as a means to suppress opposition and consolidate its power, with the intensity of violence determined by the intensity of resistance. People's democracies must suppress capitalist elements and build a planned economy. This involves breaking the resistance of capitalists and landowners, uniting the working class with other segments of society, and transitioning to public ownership of industry. Raising living standards and developing productive forces are key tasks for people's democracies. This requires increasing production in both urban and rural areas and promoting collectivization of agriculture. Collectivization in people's democracies faces unique challenges. Unlike the USSR, where land was nationalized, these countries must address the issue of land ownership during the collectivization process. The bourgeoisie in Eastern and Central Europe was weakened after World War II. This was due to demoralization from the defeat of Nazi Germany, punishment for collaboration with the Nazis, the presence of the Soviet Army, which deterred them from armed resistance. The Soviet Army prevented foreign intervention. This protected the people's democracies from capitalist aggression. Despite being weakened, the bourgeoisie resisted the new order. They employed various tactics, aligning with Western powers, USA and England, attacking communist and other democratic parties, trying to create divisions within and between these parties, infiltrating democratic parties, plotting against the new governments, supporting terrorism, banditry, and espionage. The establishment of working-class rule was a process, not an event. This involved countering the bourgeoisie's efforts, isolating the bourgeoisie from potential allies, strengthening the worker-peasant alliance, unifying the working class under communist leadership, nationalizing industry, and limiting capitalist influence in agriculture and trade. The Soviet Union played a crucial role in this process. Their presence ensured a relatively peaceful transition to working-class rule. Key moments marked the establishment of the dictatorship of the proletariat in different countries. Examples include Czechoslovakia, February 1948 events; Romania, abolition of the monarchy; Bulgaria, defeat of counter-revolutionary parties; Hungary, exposure of counter-revolutionaries within the smallholders' party. The People's Democratic Republic was a unique form of working-class dictatorship. Factors contributing to its success included the existence of the Soviet model, the collapse of the old bourgeois state apparatus, adaptation of the parliamentary system based on Soviet experience, active involvement of mass organizations in state administration. The People's Democratic State differed from both bourgeois parliamentary and Soviet states. It represented a distinct form of working-class rule. Soviet power remains the highest form of socialist state. However, the specific conditions in Eastern and Central Europe led to a different form of working-class rule, the People's Democratic Republic. Several factors contributed to the emergence of people's democracies: the balance of power within those countries, the political maturity of the working class, the global balance of power between socialism and imperialism, the specific struggles for socialism in different countries, the crucial support of the Soviet Union. The People's Democratic Republic, aided by the Soviet Union, successfully implemented the dictatorship of the proletariat. This allowed these countries to transition from capitalism to socialism. People's democracy is a unique form of working-class rule that emerged in the post-World War II era. It confirms, rather than contradicts, the importance of the October Revolution and the Soviet Union's leading role in the fight for communism. The Soviet Union's existence and assistance were critical for the development of people's democracies. This highlights the international significance of the Soviet experience. As Lenin emphasized, building socialism in people's democracies is a continuous struggle. This struggle intensifies during the collectivization of agriculture, where resistance from landowners, kulaks, is expected to be fierce. The absence of land nationalization in people's democracies adds complexity to collectivization. This is an advantage the kulaks will likely exploit. Success requires strengthening people's power and the working class's leading role. Learning from the Soviet experience and strengthening ties with other socialist countries is essential. The Council for Mutual Economic Assistance, CMEA, facilitates cooperation and mutual aid between socialist countries. This strengthens the position of socialism and democracy. People's democracies have made significant progress in their socialist development with Soviet assistance. The exception is Yugoslavia, where Tito's regime betrayed socialism and aligned with the West. Tito's actions harmed Yugoslavia's progress and its people. He will be held accountable for his betrayal. The emergence of people's democracies reinforces the historical lessons of the Soviet Union and the global communist movement. It demonstrates that dismantling the bourgeois state and establishing a new type of state are essential for the victory of communism. The necessity of the dictatorship of the proletariat. Lenin argued that despite a revolution, exploiters retained significant advantages: wealth, connections, skills, knowledge, and resources. To counter this, the working class needs to establish its own rule, which involves using force against the exploiters. The essence of the dictatorship of the proletariat is not just violence. It's about the organized and disciplined leadership of the working class to build socialism, eliminate class divisions, and end exploitation. The alliance between the working class and the peasantry is crucial. Lenin and Stalin emphasized this alliance as the foundation of the dictatorship of the proletariat. Stalin defended this principle against those who distorted it. He opposed those who denied the necessity of class alliance or equated the dictatorship of the proletariat with the dictatorship of the party. He also fought against those who downplayed the leading role of the working class and the Bolshevik Party. Building socialism involves more than suppressing the bourgeoisie. It requires winning over and re-educating the petty bourgeoisie, intelligentsia, and especially the peasantry, integrating them into socialist construction. This necessitates the dictatorship of the proletariat. The working class needs its dictatorship to lead the masses toward socialism. Lenin highlighted the need for centralized power, organization, discipline, and cultural and technological advancement to guide the peasantry and other sections of society. Persuasion and cooperation are key to bringing the peasantry into socialism. Lenin stressed the importance of patient organizational work, political education, state support, and demonstrating the benefits of cooperative enterprises. Force alone is counterproductive. The dictatorship of the proletariat is essential for uniting the peasantry against the kulaks, wealthy peasants, and the bourgeoisie. This highlights the complex and multifaceted nature of the dictatorship of the proletariat, combining force, persuasion, and alliance building. The dictatorship of the proletariat is a specific form of class alliance. It unites the working class with other working people, peasants, small proprietors, intelligentsia, etc., against capitalism, to overthrow the bourgeoisie and build socialism. This alliance must meet two conditions. It must be directed against the bourgeoisie and capitalism. The working class must have the leading role. The alliance with the peasantry is crucial, but the working class must maintain leadership. This ensures the transition towards communism. Only the working class can lead the struggle for liberation from capital. Both Lenin and Marx believed that the working class is uniquely positioned to organize and lead all exploited masses, and only its dictatorship can ultimately abolish class distinctions and the state itself. The dictatorship of the proletariat is not just about suppression, but also about education and participation. It's a tool for the communist transformation of society, involving all workers in governing and building socialism. Lenin described the mechanism of the proletarian dictatorship. Soviets. The proletariat organized in Soviets forms the basis of this power. Communist Party. The party leads and guides the Soviets. This requires the party to have the trust and support of the working class. Trade unions. These act as a link between the party and the working class, ensuring close connection and facilitating the implementation of the dictatorship. Other organizations, non-party worker and peasant conferences, and other mass organizations, broaden the party's connection with the working population. This mechanism ensures the practical implementation of the dictatorship of the proletariat. It emphasizes the dynamic interplay between the party, the working class, and various organizations in exercising proletarian power and building socialism. Lenin and Stalin emphasized the importance of various organizations in building socialism, Komsomol, to educate youth in communist ideology, unite them with the party, and prepare future generations. Cooperatives, to link the party with the peasantry, involving them in socialist construction through economic means. Stalin outlined the mechanism of the dictatorship of the proletariat. Trade unions, connect the party with the working class through production. Soviets, connect the party with the working people through the state. Cooperatives, connect the party with the peasantry through the economy. Youth union, educate and train young people in socialism. Party, leads and guides all these organizations. The purpose of this mechanism is to involve the masses in governance and socialist construction. It's about actively engaging people, not just suppressing opposition. Persuasion is the primary method for working with the masses. Lenin and Stalin stressed the importance of convincing and educating people, not simply commanding them. Coercion exists, but plays a secondary role. It's used only when necessary and with the support of the majority, after persuasion has been attempted. Trotsky's attempt to replace persuasion with coercion was condemned as anti-Bolshevik. Stalin criticized Trotsky for advocating administrative control over the masses instead of leadership through persuasion. Tito's regime in Yugoslavia is also criticized for following Trotsky's path. This highlights the danger of prioritizing coercion over persuasion and abandoning genuine working-class leadership. The leading role of the working class is crucial. This is a central point of contention between true revolutionaries and those who betray the communist cause, like Tito and Gomulka. The Soviet Union's leading role on the world stage is also essential. This underscores the importance of international solidarity and the Soviet Union's guidance in the global struggle for communism. Ultimately, the question of working-class leadership is fundamental to communist construction. This passage emphasizes the importance of maintaining a worker-centric approach to building socialism and achieving communism. The Soviet victory over Nazi Germany deepened the crisis of imperialism. This led to a weakening of imperialist control globally, particularly in Eastern and Central Europe. National liberation movements gained momentum in colonies. Oppressed peoples were inspired to fight for independence, as predicted by Stalin. The ability to prioritize the working-class perspective is crucial for Marxists. This distinguishes them from those who take a more neutral, objective view, which can lead to overlooking the importance of class struggle. The world is moving towards communism. The growing influence of the USSR, the rise of people's democracies, and the strengthening of labor movements in capitalist countries all point in this direction. Communists, led by the Soviet Union, must actively fight for communism. It won't happen spontaneously. It requires a dedicated struggle against reactionary forces. Communist leadership is essential for success. Only with communists at the helm can the democratic movement achieve victory and transition to communism. The revolutionary workers' movement and the dictatorship of the proletariat are the driving forces of progress. They represent hope for all of humanity. Marxist-Leninists must uphold the purity of their worldview and serve the interests of the working class. This includes promoting party unity, advancing communist construction, and upholding Leninist principles. The experience of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union is invaluable for the global communist movement. Lenin and Stalin repeatedly emphasized the international significance of the Soviet experience and the Bolshevik model. The Leninist-Stalinist teachings on the party's relationship to the working class are particularly important for people's democracies. This includes understanding the vanguard role of the party, the importance of working-class leadership, and the necessity of organization and discipline in building socialism. The Soviet experience provides a guiding example for communists worldwide. This passage highlights the importance of learning from the successes and struggles of the Soviet Union in the pursuit of communism.